tired. The cost, the weight he bears through endless nights and battle stares. Each strike of the hammer, each swing of the blade. The journey is long, but he's unafraid. Through the ash and smoke, the flames grow higher. He won't back down and forge his desire. Steel in his heart and fire in his eyes. He'll rise above, he'll touch the sky. Steel in the fire, forged in the night. A hero's path, a warrior's fight. He'll seek the power in the iron's call. Through the flames he'll conquer all. For every battle, for every test, he'll find the strength, he'll give his best. With the heat of the forge and the clash of steel, he'll shape his fate, he'll make it real. Echoes of war, the cries in the air. He's forged in the struggle, he's learned to dare. In the shadows of mountains, the caverns deep, he hunts for the ore that never sleeps. The stars above and the earth below guide him onward as the embers glow. With every blow, with every flame, he carves his legend and earns his name. Through the ash and smoke, the flames grow higher. He won't back down and forge his desire. Steel in his heart and fire in his eyes. He'll rise above, he'll touch the sky. Steel in the fire, forged in the night. A hero's path, a warrior's fight. He'll seek the power in the iron's call. Through the flames he'll conquer all. For every battle.
Episode of Hey, and welcome to another episode of Backstay. The Search for Steel. I hope you enjoyed the intro as we were coming in. That was a Sunu AI collaboration. It did the I helped with the lyrics. So we're back in Backstay. We're minus what, 6 days, maybe 7 days, 8 days, somewhere in there, to the update, which we will be partaking in, and I will be doing much more analysis. And as we are going through everything, we'll just have a lot of fun. And as I log into something that logged me out, I love streaming. There's so many different things that could go wrong. All right, as I'm typing on the other area. Oh, I forgot to type in the other box. Traditional, I missed it a couple times, but here you go. Hello world. Here we are. All right, well, we need to cut firewood, so that's what we're gonna do. I hate when I do that. There we go. There's my steel axes. Put these over here too. Steel axe is very good. Nice. Be where I want to be. And we will start getting some firewood. As we talk, what are we talking about? I started chopping and didn't usually write these things down or have the AI bring up random subjects. So let's see, cultural influence on identities and self-perception. Oh, interesting. Let's see, how does culture shape our sense of self-identity? Our self and identity. Okay. That's interesting, and worth a discussion over, right? So let's take the first part. How does our culture? So the culture is what we've been talking about the last couple nights. Boy, that is a big topic in and of itself. But let's say the culture is this. oh, I can't even say the standard culture anymore. How do we want to approach this? Culture does, and let me. A lot of people don't realize the definition of culture, but let's throw that out there. So yeah, here it is. This is pretty much it. It's culture is a shared belief, value, or custom, behaviors, and artifacts characterized by a group or society. It encompasses the practices, languages, rituals, arts, traditions, social norms that define a group, influence how individuals in the group think, act, and interact with one another. So going back to that first thing we were talking about, right? So we have to define culture, and America has a lot of culture. It has it used to have a top culture, and then it had all kinds of subcultures, and that was great because we called them cliques, right? You were with the subculture, you were believing in something a little bit different from everybody else. But cultures that basically come up with in craft or create a higher culture or a more melting pot of a culture, or used to be a melting pot of a culture. We talked about that in on that, and how do we define melting pot versus salad bowl, and I told you a little bit about my history with that question. But culture has a lot to do with identity, if you think about it. Your core beliefs are something that we've talked about as well on this podcast. But if you look at culture as how you identify, that brings a lot to bear, right? And this is where people can get confused. People can get influenced. Cults. The base word is culture, right? Cults craft an ideology that creates or twists or even crafts new beliefs for the individual to belong. Belonging, right, is a big part of culture because we all want to get along. So we all want to have the same basic beliefs. We don't all have to agree, and that's the best part about any culture. However, the majority of the people are going to agree. For example, if you think about marriage is a cultural institution. It's a belief in monogamy, right? So, and a lot of you, I bet, saw a picture of a man and woman, but it could be anything, right? Meaning the pairing doesn't have to be a marriage between man and woman. So the belief could be a man and man, woman and woman. Polygamy could be a cultural belief, right? So think in terms of what you identify with is essential to who or how you behave. Meaning, if you are in deep-seated, you believe in man and woman or the traditional marriage, you're going to look at the other marriages as a side note, a subculture, something out of the norm, because your norm is you live in a culture that believes in marriage, right? Now, across the board, the hierarchy of that is no one would argue for marriage, to be married, unless they believed in the institution of marriage. Right? Now, let's talk a little bit about government shaping our culture. Well, government decided we're going to give marriage license and we're going to dictate how they pay how people pay taxes, because if they're married or if they're not married. Well, that's to me a little bit disingenuous it's the government. They they should not be in marriage. Marriage is in the Catholic religion, I believe it's a what do we call those? I'm losing the word. It's not a sacrament. There we go. It's a sacrament, meaning it's one of the pieces of the church's culture that dictates how the believers of God need to form family units. And I believe there's good argument to be made that religions around the world, even philosophies, said marriage is between a man and a woman, or even, I'm not trying to stress that point. What I'm trying to stress is marriage itself, the institution of marriage, is in itself a recognized institution, and that is what most societies would base their culture or belief on. So let's move away from that topic. But my point in creating or crafting that idea in your head is, even if you don't like the idea of it, you grew up in a society that believed, a majority of the people, or right or wrong, they believed it was good, it was right, and a majority of the population still does. So at what point do you measure a cultural, what is the dominant culture? Is there a percentage of people in the population that believe something, and then that shifts the overlying culture? And I think it goes back to people grouping themselves in beliefs, but you have to have a hierarchy of beliefs, right? If you don't believe in murder, everybody, I think, can establish, yeah, we don't believe in murder. Why? It's bad. Some people would go, it's evil, it's not right, it's not unnatural, right? So the cultural belief is, if you murder somebody, it's bad, right? If you kill somebody, it's not necessarily bad. Why? Because the culture dictates the degree of the crime, right? Some things are crimes and some things aren't. It's based off of culture and law. But law is formed and crafted by beliefs and people in power, right? That we give power to in the United States. And they craft these through their beliefs. Hopefully they understand their constituents' beliefs. But if you think about the current size of government, there is no way any congressman would know a majority belief system in their district. Most districts, I would think all districts. Let me fact check myself on that. What are the size of congressional districts in the United States? What is the population? Okay, so let's see what happens. I gave it a tough question. Okay, so no, I thought I'd be right, but it's good to have confirmation. So there's 435 districts divided among 50 states. So it just as a aside, the 435 is the amount of people in Congress, in the People's House. So this is where that number is gotten. But the amount of people in every district has to equal a certain amount of the population. And as of the 2020 census, 761,000 people for every one congressman. So think about that. If you needed to make law for 761,000 people. Would you know everybody's core beliefs and culture in your district? Everyone. And in that, would you tell the minority cultures in your district, that the majority culture will dictate the direction of the country? Crazy, right? I think that's way too broad. But if you think about the alternative, the Constitution actually states how many congressmen, or what the ratio is of congressmen to constituents. And let me get you that number. I'm chopping a tree, so it's going to be... I don't want to lose the tree, so I have to... There we go. All right, let me walk to the other tree, and then I can say, what is the... or what does the Constitution say about congressmen to representation? How many people? So if you look at the, and I have a good number in my head, but I want to make sure I have it as, because the Constitution actually says a number. It doesn't change that number. So so the original Constitution said the number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative. So the minimum ratio would be one representative for every 30,000 people. So think about how many representatives would be in our Congress. I'm kind of liking that, because like nothing would get done. However, right now we have everything so screwed up that something needs to be done so we can bring it back to a place where nothing should be done. But the see, it wasn't even a... Congress passed a Permanent Apportionment Act of 1929. So I think, I mean, if I'm not a legal scholar, but I think that is actually unconstitutional because it's an act. It's not a amendment to the Constitution. So if you think about it, just because Congress says something doesn't mean it's constitutional. In my mind, it's not. I wonder if anybody ever challenged that. So that act of 1929 said, we'll cap the House at 435 members, period, which mandated a reapportionment process every 10 years after the census, dividing every 435 seats based on the population, which means you probably heard of the, what was it called? The, redistricting of the congressional districts. Remember, I don't know if how many people have heard that, but this is kind of getting into the culture because, well, it has a lot to do with culture because of the way the government is formed. It directly impacts what the laws are made, which directly impacts our culture, right? So keep that in mind as we move through this. The fact that we have a system of government that is really broken at this point. And just to give you some quick and dirty math, by the way, here, let me so let's just say there's 350 million people in the United States. 350 million people. And then we divide that by 30,000 people. We get 11,666 congressmen. Yes, you heard it right. 11,667, or say 68 congressmen. Absolutely insane. But I'm kind of on that side. Could you imagine a building of Congress? At least they justify the spending of the congressional spending. But in all seriousness, if you would have a better chance, and I know even with the 30,000 people, I mean that's crazy. That's actually pretty high too. I mean that's crazy high if you think about it. It's like, guys, 30,000 people to represent 30,000 people? Seriously? That's crazy high. That's absolutely insane. Oh, I forgot. I want to go chop wood so bad. But I need to put some back. There we go. All right. So back to culture. So if we're making laws and we're influencing the culture is going to change depending on the law we create, right? And I'm going to take a quick drink. Not a sponsored spot, but if you ever do try a zero sugar, 0 calorie soda, I highly advise Zevia. It has stevia in it, and it's really, really good. If you have an overload of sugar, it won't taste right to you. But if you're off sugar or keto diet, definitely. But if you're off sugar for a while or minimal sugar, Zevia seems to have just enough sugar flavor. Stevia is the plant that it comes from, and it's like crazy strong in sweetness. But the good news is there is when I say that there's no sugar, so it doesn't spike your insulin, so you don't get an insulin response. I think that's because I'm near a bear. That's that incessant violin. So let's go back to culture. There's a lot of people who talk about culture and they talk about changing culture and stuff. Culture is organic, right? Can you change culture? Yeah, you can get the people who believe on the same thing to actually move and create and influence and talk out, speak out. And a great way of thinking about culture in my mind is when you look at different holidays, right? You have Halloween. Halloween is cultural. It's an American idea, more than likely to sell candy, honestly. But it was fun. It created an atmosphere where kids would dress up, and especially in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where they dress up and they go door to door. And this is when neighbors were actually, friendly with one another. And even if they weren't friendly, the kids were saved from the ire of feuds, let's say. But you had fun. You walked around. You had a good time with your friends. You might even had a party or two when you got older because you didn't trick or treat, right? But ultimately, Halloween was a cultural thing, and everybody recognized it at a minimum. There was a time in the 80s, I want to say, where Halloween was actually looked at as devils and stuff like that. And I think it's always been around, that thought. But I think it was in the 80s, it really gained momentum. Like, oh, this is really bad, and we're teaching our kids. Kids take things like that with a grain of salt, and especially if you teach them with the history of Halloween, the haunted history of Halloween. I think History Channel has something with it. But it builds culture, right? It built a culture around Halloween. We loved scary movies. We love going out to haunted houses, and we love trick-or-treating on the day, telling scary stories. Sometimes you go camping, and by the campfire, you could tell the scary stories and spook everybody, and get everybody to jump. And it was a lot of fun, right? A lot of building a culture, and through that culture, people capitalized, right? Because yes, there's a need. So what did they do? They created costumes. Who wants to dress up, right? We don't have to make our costumes anymore. Let's let's make costumes and let people dress up with some icons or some monsters or somebody who they want to be. They don't even have to be like monsters or anything like that, right? So building culture, right? And then we have Christmas, right? Christmas was a big cultural thing, especially for Christians, for sure, in the United States. So you had those holidays, and of course you have the 4th of July, which brings culture together. You have the U.S. Constitution Day, and nobody likes that one. That's September 17th. I love that day, but that wasn't as big as July 4th, Independence Day, right? Two different dates in history, by the way. The Constitution was a great document that was rewritten after the Civil War. And then you have because we had the Articles of Confederation before that. And if you read the Articles of Confederation, it was a good sound document, but it wasn't near as tight as the U.S. Constitution that was created afterward. But these are the things about culture that you would be able to talk to, you'd be able to associate with people. Valentine's Day is culture, right? It became more of a romance day, couples day, and then it just bloomed into a day of going out to eat, spending it with your loved one, getting flowers and chocolates or candy. A lot of fun. It built culture, and it didn't matter what culture you were assigned or believed in, because it was that overarching culture I was talking about. Not everybody did it, but that's okay, because ultimately it's like we were saying earlier in the conversation, you have to appreciate that there's different cultures, right? There's always different cultures. There's in songs. Wow. Okay, I'm weirded out. This is weird. Okay. So let's keep that in mind as we're talking about culture. How do you affect culture indirectly? Well, mostly you create your own style, your individual styles, right? You build cultures, around independence sometimes. For example, the leather jacket culture. I think they were called the greasers in the 50s or late 50s, early 60s, right? What other cultures were there? Yeah, I mean, there's the punks. I think Ferris Bueller had the best. Let me. I gotta get that quote. Bueller Glick speech. It was great. It was absolutely phenomenal, and I remember the '80s had a great culture. Secretary was looking into the principle about clicks Paris. All right, so ChatGPT failed me on that one. Oh, it was Grace. Grace was the so she was like, all right, oh, he's very popular, Ed. The sportos, the motorheads, the geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebs, dickheads, they all adore him. And they think he's a righteous dude. What a great line. But that brings me to the cultural. I mean, these are all subcultures, right? Sportos. Well, the sportos, they were the sports jocks, the jocks, right? They created their own subculture around sports, which became a bigger deal. Even a lot of non sportos or jocks would watch footballs or college football or soccer or hockey a lot of people were into sports, so it became a culture of the United States, especially around football and baseball, right? Hockey, not so much. That I would consider that a subculture. I loved hockey when I was younger. Hockey was awesome. I loved to play it. I loved to play football. I played a lot of football. I can't watch sports as much today. Just not my bag. But that was part of a culture, right? That was part of the American culture in particular. So you had all these cultures and subcultures in the United States. So how do you influence them? Well, with the sports or the jocks, what would you do? You would sell jerseys. You would sell different sports paraphernalia. You would sell sporting equipment. You would get a culture of people getting together, pickup games and starting their own leagues and all kinds of stuff. And this is true for everything that we're talking about, like any culture or any belief. Now let's just go back to the original definition of culture. And we say anything, beliefs, values, customs, or behaviors. So if we look at all those things I've said, the beliefs, values, customs, the customs for football might have been different than that for soccer, right? For people who enjoyed soccer. Or if you go into subcultures, the genres of music, punk, you had all kinds of, I'd like punk myself. So you had punk, the Rebels, you had metal, you had hair bands, you had, pop, you had all kinds of different genres, which crafted the culture. They sung about different things in the culture. And that drove the behavior of individuals, right? Many people were like, I have to be like this pop star. I have to be like this singer. I have to be like this, rock star. So they dressed the part, or maybe they had so much influence that the artist was able to convey, a certain type of dress or a certain type of makeup or anything. So we're looking back at the values. What do you value? Well, I value the music. I value the respect of that I get when I dress up. There's a great cultural thing as well. When you dress up, you feel good, right? A lot of people treat you differently when you dress up. Why is that? Right? So think about them in that term as well. Is culture is a lot of different things. So I think what I'm ultimately coming here for, and I'm kind of rambling at this point, but my point of culture, right, and knowing culture, understanding culture, wanting to be a part of a certain culture or what have you, is the fact that is there somebody around? Is that the culture certainly has influence on identity and self-perception, right? Now you had the Goths, right? Which the Goths were funny to me because you would call them a name, and a true Goth would be like, yeah, whatever. Grunge was a culture, a subculture, right? I wouldn't say it was mainstream by any choice. It might have peaked. But we even have the term mainstream culture versus subcultures, right? Mainstream culture is what everybody believes or what everybody's perception, but the self-perception of people based off of the culture they identified with gave them comfort, gave them warmth, gave them a place of belonging, right? Let's see. The psychology of cultural norms and social behavior. We talked a little bit about this. Cultural norms dictate acceptable behavior within society. Otherwise, you're looked at, you're shunned almost. I wouldn't say shunned. Not anymore. But you're definitely... Shunned is active in my mind. It's more passive than that. I wouldn't say ignored, of avoided, maybe. Like, let's say, for instance, in business, if you're in sales and you go to a customer, so no, let's go with better yet, if you're a lawyer, right, and you go to court and you don't have the appropriate dress, what happens? Well, the judge will tell you, you know, you're a lawyer, you need to respect the court. Well, that is part of crafting a narrative to conform people to social behaviors, right? My God, did I just forget like half of my... Oh, let's see if I have... Yeah, I had all of them. This is like, I wouldn't say this is 90% of the game, but this definitely has a big component if you want steel. For sure. All right, let's see. So yeah, there's a lot to the psychology of social norms, right? Or what is considered social norms, and what should be considered social norms, because any norm that you have is considered social, depending on the culture you're going to. In the 50s and 60s, up to probably the 80s, I would say even in the 80s, coming to work in anything other than a business suit was looked at like, oh man, this guy's not really good, or this woman is dressing inappropriately, right? And they're not going to go anywhere because the boss already has made it up in the mind that they can't, they're unclean, or they're well, they feel they're just not right for any position higher than what they currently have. So cultural norms would dictate acceptable behavior in society, and we put quotes around acceptable because, let's face it, what's acceptable to one group is not acceptable to another. And if you have, it depends on which culture is stronger. Interesting, right? I mean, well, I shouldn't say stronger. Today you have to, there's no real strong culture, right? There's no dominant culture. So a lot of times, unless your boss is dictating, you know, what you should wear to work, you can pretty much wear whatever you want within reason, right? And some companies don't even have a dress policy anymore. I can tell you a couple companies I've worked for, they just don't have a dress policy. Others had a dress policy. You had to wear khakis and a polo. That was the minimum dress requirement. Right? Some people like to dress up though. So you see some, like where I work, you see some people dressed to nines like all the time, and they look good. They look sharp, right? They sometimes you want to say, hey, you look good, but you can't because it's not in the cultural society today. You can't give somebody a genuine compliment without it being, if they take it wrong, then you're in front of HR trying to explain your actions because of whatever, you know, whatever was perceived of the compliment. But that's a cultural shift, right? Especially in a place of employment. If somebody told you you look good and you were like, oh, they're doing that because, you know, X, let's take it from a guy's point of view. Which, well, actually, we got to take it from a woman's point of view, because women, and rightly so, they have to be on the guard at work. However, for a guy who's genuine, and let's just say the woman had a bad day and just was, you know, there's things going on that the guy didn't know about, and the guy said, hey, you look good. He's not trying to make any advance. He's just noting how much effort she put into her look that day, and that she achieved what she was going for, right? That's basically the meaning. And a lot of, in the past, a lot of people, that's all that was meant to be. Now you always have those outliers, right? Those sexual harassment or sexual aggressors, or even I call them the people who flirt way too much at work, right? It's just like, dude, that's not the place. It's not appropriate. The culture is to be inclusive, and we just don't want to have a bar-like attitude here. Go to the bar, and then you can. And it's not really acceptable at the bar anymore either. But I think everybody's getting my point. The culture itself is dictating the behavior, and it's important that that culture dictates behavior, because let's face it, Dubai, the culture is don't steal, right? So if you steal, people will be very upset with you, and there'll be harsh consequences in that city, right? In America, stealing is definitely looked down upon. You might get into an area where they're fed up with it, but overall, people are just like, "Give me my stuff back. I don't care. Just give me my stuff back and leave me alone." We're at the point where stealing is. I don't want to say it's okay, because it's not. That's not what is being said, right? It's at the point where if the law doesn't take care of it, or it doesn't want to deal with it in an appropriate manner, or what we think the appropriate manner is, then why even claim it, right? So there's a lot of different acceptable norms and behaviors. Let me see, and it'll be interesting to see what are some examples of U.S. cultural acceptable behaviors and non-acceptable behaviors. Provide 20. There we go. Let's see if we get a little bit here. So as that ChatGPT is looking out, because it has to think, culturally acceptable. Ooh, this is a tough question, even for somebody like an AI that's going out receiving all this information from the internet, plus all the sources. It's going through everything that it can possibly get to in order to figure out. Here's some. All right, so it's going through the acceptable ones. So let's look at 10 acceptable behaviors in the U.S. Right, and this could vary country to country, but I believe in the world, this culture, some of these cultural acceptable cultural behaviors are common. Shaking hands, standard greeting, especially in professional settings. Sure, and this is good. And one of the things that culture brings is there is a masculine and a feminine. So, but I would say shaking hands is non-gender specific, meaning it's acceptable for both women and men to shake hands in a professional setting. Making eye contact. This one, I'm going to take a little bit of what do I want to say? Well, let's just read it. Making eye contact shows respect and attentiveness through direct eye contact. Should be moderate. Yeah, I guess that last part needs to be said, because eye contact could be seen as aggressive too, right? For sure. And that's okay if you want to show that part, but eye contact in general, I think there's actually a behavior in, if you believe in the practice of trying to read somebody's body language, the practice states that people who avoid eye contact have something to hide or are shy to a point that it shouldn't be, not that it shouldn't be allowed, but it's one of those things that you would be more suspicious of that person or more cautious around that person, right? So direct eye contact. I would say making eye contact isn't a global cultural acceptable behavior. There are certain cultures where I believe you need to avert your eyes depending on the situation, right? So saying please and thank you, two big ones actually. I think this should always, the politeness is valued, even in casual exchanges. If we're at work, especially, leaders say please, managers don't. And they're just like, you're here to do what I want you to do, so get it done, and I don't need to say please and thank you because this is your job. No. That doesn't work for me. We're all human. We'd like to be respected. And by the way, I am creating a song on leadership. So, a little catchy tune. So I'm going to premiere that on my YouTube channel, hopefully, and have a little video with it. That's the part I'm struggling with, is the video part. So, because I want to have a little video with it. Okay, let's see. Tips for service. This is a big sore spot for me. Okay. So expected for services like dining, ride shares, haircuts, usually 15 to 20%. This is the AI telling me it. I have to do 20% to tip somebody to allow me the privilege of, let's say, dining at their facility and them serving me. If they're good servers, I have no problem. Actually, I'm a big tipper. I believe in tipping so long as the work is being accomplished. They're the people are attentive, they're friendly, they're kind, they're courteous, and shared. Right? We don't do one-sided things. I'm not a dick, excuse me, for saying that, and treating somebody like absolute crap. Right? That's not the way it happens. And then tip them big and say, I tipped you though. That's ridiculous. So, acceptable behaviors, tipping in the United States, yes. I went to France, not so much. We were a bunch of Americans in France. Sorry, I took a sip of Zevia. We were a bunch of sailors in France, cons France, and one of my friends went to tip somebody. And the French waiter was like, what, do I need to go to waiter school? What are you doing? Didn't I do a good enough job? Is this an insult of some type? And this was back in the 90s. It might have changed a little bit, but I was like, hey, that's respectable. That really is. Mostly because they don't view tipping the same as we do in the United States. I don't mind tipping, especially when I have good service. When I mind tipping is everywhere. Remember, now they ask you to tip when you check out of a store, and they're like, would you like to tip 10%? No, I don't. I bought something. I did everything. Why would I tip somebody? What is that about? Where it makes sense, I'm 100% for tipping. Where it doesn't make sense, I am definitely 100% against tipping. But tipping is a cultural acceptable behavior, right? If you tip in the United States, somebody's going to be like, they might actually, if you tip less than 15%, they might get very upset at you. Absolutely. That would bother me, because what if, again, we have to look each other we have to look at each other like we're humans. Like we have problems. Maybe going out, this was the last bit of money, but I just didn't want to eat in again, and I just had to get out. But do I have to save enough for the tip as well? A good place where I think the tip is kind of a crappy idea is when we're talking about like McDonald's, right? I put it into the computer, you pulled it off a shelf, and you want me to tip. What? That doesn't make sense to me, right? Now, if I had a made-to-order thing, yeah, I think that would be appropriate, right? For sure. All right, so now if you're interested in the game a little bit more, what I'm trying to do now is, now that I've completed that mission of gathering wood, I'm gonna go sharpen my axes again, and then I'm going to see about. Actually, what I'll do is I'll do this for now. So I have these ingots here, and I'll turn them into steel ore. So I'll go here and I'll grab a lot of these, because I'll need a lot of these for turning these or prepping these, forging these into steel ingots. So let me see, steel. Oh, I need 30 of them, so I couldn't even do. That kind of sucked. Do I have another 20? Do I doubt I do. Yeah, but I can turn more. There we go. While I'm here, right? I'll do some pure iron. Did you see all those all that coal go away? Yeah, that's why I have to keep that coal fire burning. All right. Oh, didn't mean to put that in here. There we go. All right, let's go steel. Let's sharpen some steel. I love my house. I'm gonna miss it. I just love the way I go up the stairs into 2 different areas of the house. I haven't finished it, because by the time I finish it, it's gonna be one of those, oh yeah, you finished. Take away. Thank you so much. Thank you for that special something. I love how you still have the axe. That's alright. I'll throw these in there. And maybe I will go hunting for a little bit. Yeah, oh, Oh, the axe. Alright, let's go get some hunting tools. Now I hunt, I take a shield and a sword, so... Yeah. That goes there. Elegant greatsword for sure. Simple spear, for sure. Novice spear, that's the one. No, that's two-handed. Is this simple? Sleek is two-handed. No, I definitely want the two-handed. There's a one-handed somewhere. I put one-handed spear, yeah. We'll work on the spear, huh? Yeah, I guess so. Move that, move that. There goes the 3. Alright, good to go there. Pick up some food. I need some more arrows. There we go. Some more arrows here. No, it's not. Here. Where are my arrows? I know I crafted like a ton of arrows. One iron, there you go. One iron, there we go. Alright. And then we'll go up here. Grab some potions. So this is this one. And that's minor potion of vitality 3. There we go. Alright. So we got those. And then we go get some more food. Food and drink. Food. Those, I'm out of those. Okay, that's just venison sausage. I can make a lot of that. Not too worried about those. Let's see. So we stopped at please, thank you, and tipping for service for sure. Smiling at strangers. I don't see this as a cultural norm. I do. People think it's great, creepy. I think that's changing. This is how cultures change, right? So if you think about it, that one is ChatGPT spectral for sure.